Welcome back, fellow Blue Noses, to the Free Blue Boys podcast. Thank you to all our viewers and listeners for joining us again. Of course, if you are new to the channel, please subscribe, like if you enjoyed today's video, and hit the bell notification button so you never miss a new upload from the Free Blue Boys podcast. While you're at it, why not drop us a follow on our social media platforms, links to which are on the screen for you now and down in the description below. Dad, I feel like we're confusing people a little bit. We've gone from 3 to 4 to 2.
Yeah, we do like to vary it and see if people notice, really, see if people are staying awake while they're watching us. It's the only way
challenging
to do it,
in
isn't
itself.
Yeah. We were talking about one week just having empty stools here, weren't we, and seeing if anybody noticed that.
Just completely throw people off.
Yeah, people would probably download that as an ASMR episode, really. So they
probably would.
There's some fucking idiots talking, really, just a nice bit of silence. But yeah, it is. So I guess we should say Joe's not here because he's not feeling well at the moment.
Indeed.
Hopefully, he's all right by Friday.
Hope so.
When we got the match. But yeah, it is a bit weird, isn't it? Times when there's not the three of us, especially when we're in the studio as opposed to in the car. I think we feel
it does.
More.
It feels like you've got a bit more space, so it feels even weirder, doesn't it? Because obviously in the car it feels a bit more compact, doesn't it?
True.
So,
very true.
But obviously the back of last week's episode, obviously great to have Jay on, and a quick shout out to Jay, banging lad. Cracking having you
Superb,
on, fantastic.
Mate.
Thanks so much for coming on, and thank you to everybody who viewed, liked, and commented on the back of that video as well. Really good success. First in the instalment of a new podcast series on this channel called Who Are You? If you haven't checked out the video already, make sure you do.
Yeah.
So we'll be having some more guests on in the future, no doubt. Well, at least that's the plan anyway.
Hopefully, yeah. I mean, I guess some of those guys will have seen it, obviously we're in contact with them to a greater or lesser degree. Some of
we
them,
are,
we
true.
See them at the game, or sometimes they'll communicate with us separately.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, well, hopefully we can continue with that and have another good hours worth of chat. Nearly it was, wasn't it? And
it was.
And a curry and beer afterwards, like we had with Jay.
Yeah.
And I'll reiterate my thanks, Jay, to you, mate. It was fantastic, and it's something that the four of us should be proud of. Really, we did that. I think it was really good night, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was cracking night, thoroughly enjoyable. What's not been so enjoyable, obviously, is somewhat of the form that we've been in lately. Yeah. And I almost felt a little bit glad for the international break for once. Yeah, it's not often I think that, or even say that, more to the point. And I don't think you and Joe feel the same way in that respect. But I
agree.
We're a bit apoplectic at the moment, aren't we? To characterise it somewhat. We love going the games. We always do. We get behind the team, or as much as we can do at any one time, given the current situation. But I think, like you were saying, Dad, before we switched the camera on, this isn't so much a big time for the club in terms of chasing promotion or trying to avoid a relegation scap, have we done for many years prior to this. But this is a big time for Chris Davis now. This is make or break for him at Blues.
Yeah, I think
as far as we're aware anyway, because we're not aware of the privy to the internal communications at the club, so little do we know.
No, I mean, we're surmising, aren't we? We talked about what we feel, and we've kind of, followed the kind of the trail of clues, as it were, But you are right. Really, I guess he's got to win nearly all the games, if not all of them, to prove a point. If he gets another 21 points now and we end up in the 70s, we're still not going to make the playoffs. I think that ship sailed. But that is a different question then, isn't it? It's like, okay, so a guy who is trying to motivate a team in matches where there's nothing for us hanging on them, and we're playing 4 teams amongst those 7 games who've got either a promotion or relegation issue at hand, that sends a different signal then. It makes people think about the whole scenario differently.
Yeah.
It says, this guy can motivate in circumstances where there's nothing riding on it, and that casts him in a different light, I think, anyway.
I would agree, Dad. I think it does, because it's, like you say, when you've got nothing riding on it, you've got no reason, really, to turn the gas on, have you, and to put the pressure on the teams that you're playing against. Because when you look at the remaining fixtures and teams that we're playing, everybody's got something to play for. They're either trying to avoid a relegation into League One, or they're trying to gain promotion. It's one of the two.
Yeah.
There's very few teams out there now with nothing to play for. Unfortunately, we're one of them.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So we're kind of the team that teams want to play at the moment, really, because you're almost cannon fodder in that respect, picking up points, even though you don't want it to be that. Because we always want Blues to win. We always do. We do. But it's difficult at the moment, considering the circumstances and the way that teams have been playing. You can see it on the players' faces. Yeah. They seem just tired of what's been happening. Yeah. Like they've been, and this is something that a lot of fellow podcasters and a lot of our viewers and listeners that have been commenting on our previous videos have been saying. It just feels like they're not been taken off the leash. They're not being allowed to have that freedom, creativity, and to bring the ball forward in the way that you would expect the quality of the attacking players, certainly in the team, and the money that we've spent, that you would think it would go about that way. It just hasn't. It just hasn't come to fruition.
No, I don't think so. And I'd like to think that this is the perfect opportunity to unleash that, and to allow the players to display more of what they're about as individuals, rather than playing within the system. Constantly.
Be more expressive in their play. That's all we'd like to see, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
really?
I don't hold out much hope for it, because I think
nor do I,
somewhere that Chris Davis doesn't really have it in his makeup.
No.
But, I mean, there have been signs that's been stifled, not only in our own observations, and this is something I know you wanted to talk about. There are players who are making or ex-players I should say, are making very clear noises that is an issue.
Yeah.
For Blues.
Yeah.
And I know you wanted to talk about Keshi on that front, didn't you?
If you'd like to sponsor the Free Blue Boys podcast, you can get in touch via our social media platform or via our email address. Thanks very much. Now back to the podcast. Because previously we've seen Keshi in his first interview at Portsmouth alluded directly to Chris Davis by name, saying how they weren't able to celebrate properly at the back end of last season. They felt like it was contained more, and they weren't allowed to be almost proud of their achievements in the way that he would like to have been. And you could chalk this up if it was just him to sour grapes and players departing from clubs, as you've alluded to before, Dad, when we've talked about this and the way that the players are around Davis, or at least the way we see it at the moment, and a lot of our viewers and listeners see it the same way. Yeah. Because obviously you've got Mark Lennon and Lyndon Dykes in that mix as well. But Keshi Anderson was on a podcast. I don't know the name of the podcast, but I've seen the clip where the podcaster asked him a question of, how do you weigh up managers and their management skills versus their football skills? How would the split tend to be in terms of percentage, and what your experiences are of that? And the first answer out of Keshi's mouth was, I've had work with a manager whose people skills are the worst. They're the worst I've come across in the game. Yeah. But his football skills, in terms of skills, are brilliant. Yeah. The problem is, he said, while we were doing well in the early part of his tenure, the bad management side of things got ignored, because of how successful we were as a team. But now that that's changed since, that's now become a problem. Yeah. You don't have to be a genius to figure out who he's talking about.
No, I think most people have kind of, just put two and two together and come up with the right number, haven't they?
I think so.
And to build on that, on that kind of point that Keshi's making there, there's an interesting stat that I came across this week. So I was digging into things a little bit. This season, and this is quite a shock to me actually, when Blues have gone ahead, we haven't lost. Right, when we've gone ahead, we haven't lost a game this season.
I'm surprised at that.
Yeah, but
I'm really surprised at that.
But apparently that is true, and I'll rack my brain thinking, I can't think of when that happened actually. So yeah, maybe it is true. But on the flip side of that, when we've gone behind, we've only won once, and that was at Blackburn away in August. This is 7 months ago. The reason that seems important to me is, are we saying that this guy, he can't motivate the players, he can't inspire them when you're up against it, as we are at the moment? That is what it calls into question for me. Has he got the ability to engender resilience in the players, to say to them, look, we've got to roll our sleeves up here. We can't just take the piss like we did last season. It's not a cakewalk. We have now got to show that we've got some backbone. Yeah. Away from home, it's been abysmal, but there have been instances where that's also been prevalent at home at times, where there are games like against Sheffield Wednesday, against Charlton, maybe against Derby, and against Albion as well, when they were at their lowest ebb at that point.
They were.
Where we've not shown enough. We've not shown enough resilience in dealing with the situation. And that maybe is married up to what Keshi was saying about, this guy can't kind of go into a group of players and say, come on lads, we're in this together and I'm right behind you. I think he's too cold to be able to do it.
Maybe he just doesn't have that warmth about him, like you say, Dad. Yeah. Maybe he just doesn't. Maybe he's too robotic in his approach. He doesn't know how to lock into what it is that makes a player tick and identify that in an individual. And it's very hard, I think, in football to be both. Yeah. There's managers that are either very personable to their players and understand them as people, but they're not necessarily the best footballing brains. Yeah. There's very few that do it well. I mean, the one that you did name prior to switching the camera on for this episode was Jose Mourinho.
Yeah.
And he's a prime example of that. Players loved him when he was at Chelsea, particularly in his first spell, but he's a footballing genius as well. Yeah. There are very few that can do both. And I think that's not just in football, that's in life as well. Yeah. I think you meet very few managers that are capable of doing that, but football's a different beast in its own entirety, I think. Yeah. And I think that's maybe what it is, Dad. Maybe he's just not capable of inspiring the players.
No, and I think a good manager, a good people person will recognise that they haven't got good technical skills.
Yeah.
And that's why they have the Chris Davises of this world, because they're good coaches.
Yeah.
They don't need them to be kind of, the favourite person in the dressing room or at the training ground. They need them to communicate their ideas across on a technical basis so the players know exactly what they're doing. The arm round the shoulder or the bollocking, because let's get it straight, right?
Yeah.
A man manager isn't all about kind of supping up to people. If you've got a hand bollockings out, you do it as well.
You do, of course you do.
But if you can't, if you know that you've got shortcomings on the coaching front, you get people in who can do it for you.
Of course you do.
And that's the issue, that like Chris Davis is good on that side of things. There is no doubt, and obviously Keshi's words back that up. But the other side is coming into question more and more often now for me anyway.
Yeah, I'd agree with you as well. It's not only coming to question, but for some people it's even beyond reasonable doubt.
Yeah,
I mean, albeit you could like the likes of Brendan Rodgers, very much his style of football, to Chris Davis, because that's a lot of manager that Chris Davis spent a lot of time with. But look at the results and how he progressed up in the divisions and how he maintained success in the Premier League. Yeah. They complemented each other. Exactly. Brendan Rodgers arguably would have been a better people manager.
Yeah.
So you need to have that balance. Maybe Ben Petty isn't that kind of person. Maybe he's very similar to Chris Davis. It's difficult to know because we're not privy to the intricacies of the team. But it starts to just fizzle out a little bit more and become more apparent when we see the reaction of players after games. And like you say, Dad, it's like what Keshi spoke about before, and Lyndon was very public in his reaction following the Charlton defeat as well. And of course, there's ever been the rumours of Mark Leonard, obviously never confirmed, that he's had a personal fallings out with Chris Davis as well. Yeah. So that is very much there. And if I could draw an analogy, and it's one of my favourite films of all time, it's one of the original monster movies, Jaws, directed by Steven Spielberg, and the book was written by Peter Benchley.
It was.
So there's a scene later on in the film, for any of our viewers and listeners who have seen the film, where basically the boat is crippled by the shark, and they're trying to draw the shark into the Narrows, and loads of water's flooding into the engine, and it's pumping out smoke. And one of the main characters, Quint, is having a disagreement with Hooper and Brody as well there, who's not on board at all with what Quint's doing at that moment in time. They have a bit of a tussle, him and Hooper, Quint and Hooper, should I say, and he just carries on regardless.
Yeah.
And he's there, and they're both staring at him, and he's there singing to himself, "Farewell to you old Spanish ladies." Yeah. And to me, that's kind of, I sat there watching that because I was watching it a few days ago, and I went, that's Chris Davis.
Yeah. Despite all the noise and all the threat and all the kind of impending potential doom, and I put that in context of doom in our terms is like we haven't made the playoffs.
Yeah.
It's not the end of the world, but in our little world, it's not great. It does match up exactly to that, really.
It does. Yeah. Everybody's looking at him going, this is the wrong thing to do. Yeah. This isn't working, but you're doing it anyway because you're so determined in what you believe is the right thing. And sometimes that's a good thing, but it's destructive at this point, and it's become evident that it is. But that was what occurred to me in that moment of all things.
Good pop culture analogy, that is, actually. And I think that displays it perfectly, and it almost gives an insight into the mindset, doesn't it? Because as a character, we know what Quint was like. He was always kind of my way or the highway.
Yeah,
and it comes across with that kind of vibe, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it?
I guess if he's going to make inroads on this and try and convincing us and the board and other people as well, it's got to start Friday.
Yeah,
with the game at St Andrews at Knighthead Park against Blackburn.
Haven't they? They've occasionally creeped up to sort of mid-table echelons before, but they've always been there or thereabouts. They've struggled to get off the mark early on in the season. I think the defeat that they suffered at home to us winded them quite a bit at the time.
I'd say so. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, Joe and I were there that day, as you know, and
yeah, of course you were.
It was. I think for the 3/4 of the game, I would say they deserved to be in front as we approached the 90th minute. But something's changed subtly in the last period, and the brittleness of them, which has been evident in the results since and their position now, was there for all to see that day.
Yeah,
to allow us to kind of score from what was their corner, to come down the other end of the pitch and just kind of get the winner. That told a little tale in its own right, and I think I've watched a few of their home games this season. And that's been evident again and again and again.
Yeah.
However, they are a much better away team than they are at home. They're kind of mid-table or slightly above as far as their away form's concerned. They take a decent number of points. I think they've got the kind of players who will enable them to do that.
Yeah.
But they are up against it, and I think Michael O'Neill, it's a good change of manager.
I think so. I think it was needed.
It was. And Northern Ireland are now out of the World Cup in terms of the playoffs. He can concentrate his full attention on keeping Blackburn in the Championship. Whether he takes the job long term or not, I don't know. but he is an experienced guy.
He is, very.
He knows his way around it, doesn't he? You know, they've got a lot of work to do, haven't they? You know, I mean, in terms of kind of the strengths and kind of, I mean, you know, you've seen them yourself, haven't you? Know, in terms of being a strong team, winning the ball in the air and that kind of thing. So I think we know what we're going to get, don't we?
I think we do. They're a strong aerial team, one of the best aerial teams in the division, I believe, actually, as well. And that's been proved lately, more so in their away form, like you say, Dad. Erin Cashin's going to be in there with that mix, so that will be interesting to see how that plays out. They recently, I think the most recent results prior to the international break is they beat Millwall.
They did indeed.
Albeit Millwall went down to 10 men, but still, you've got to play what's in front of you. And we made that point very clear, didn't we, in our post-match following the Sheffield United game, given that we were playing against 10 men for the majority of that game as well. Absolutely. So that's going to be something that's going to be a real bone of contention, isn't it? And going to be hotly contested. And also as well, not only with the aerial threat, but when it comes down, their first to second and third balls a lot of the time as well. Two things that we really struggle with.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, and I think again that kind of might come into what you and I talk about when we get onto kind of the team, you know, and what that needs to look like really. You know, how we're going to compete for that kind of thing, because you know these guys are going to come at us. You know, they're used to playing the kind of low block and the break away from home. You know, and we've never really been that great with it, the ball over the top.
We never have been, no, have we?
No, we haven't. I think we know what their strengths are.
Yeah,
they're not a good team at keeping the lead, though. They're almost the kind of the opposite to us, in that they are the fourth worst team in the division for retaining the lead. Well,
that was proven when we played them at Ewood Park, wasn't it, really? It's more evident should you need it. Yeah. And I think that's maybe going to be a little bit of worry for them, which makes me think they're going to come at us out of the blocks early on. They're going to be playing the ball high, but they're going to be press us back into our own half, which we don't like at home.
No.
So Davis has got a decision to make, really. And like you say, Dad, looking at the team as well, in light of potential weaknesses that Blackburn do have, we're going to need to look to exploit that. Yeah. Now, in terms of the starting 11, I think we're going to resort back to Beadle again.
I think you're right, yeah. I think that's true. I don't know. I don't know what Allsop's got to do, really, at the end of the day. You know, unless there's an injury or some other kind of, you know, other personal issue relating to Beadle, I don't think that's going to change.
No.
I think before we get onto our own team, I was just going to mention a few of their kind of threats as well, you know, things that we need to watch out for. There's a couple of Japanese lads who play for them, who I think have been really good and perhaps underestimated a bit this season. You're talking about Ahashi and Morishita now. Ahashi's the goal scorer, Morishita's the goal creator. Those two guys have been involved in a lot of their goals this season. I think Ahashi has scored around about a quarter of their total league goals this season.
That's a lot when you take it into context of the season.
I mean, 8 out of 32. They're not a great team for scoring their chances, though. Their XG is 52 versus 36 scored. I mean, that's a shortcoming, isn't it? Really?
It is really when you think about it.
They miss a lot of chances. And then another kind of tormentor in chief, I think, for Blues, not just for Blackburn, for Norwich. He scored against us in the away game. Is Todd Cantwell. You know, he's always, you know, he always seems to be a threat against us. You know, just kind of finding those spaces in between, kind of, you know.
I think it's what he spends a lot of his time doing on the pitch. To be fair, he finds those little spaces. He's almost like Marvin Dutch. He does a little bit with not a lot of space.
He does,
or does quite a bit in some cases. He's going to be a threat, someone that we're going to have to monitor closely.
Yeah.
And he's probably going to be pivotal to them coming out of the blocks early on and pushing us back into our own, putting us under pressure.
Agreed.
Something acutely we're going to have to be aware of, I think, even as the game goes on as well, because he's potentially somebody who can make something out of nothing.
He is, and there aren't that many players. I mean, I think he's a bit kind of mercurial. He kind of, if he's on an off day, you never see him. Again, a bit like Dutch, really. You know, it's kind of if he's on it that day, he's interested.
Great.
You know, he could really take you out. And the goal he scored against us at Ewood Park, I thought was great.
Yeah, it was a really well taken goal, actually.
You know, good volley from a clearance from a corner and all that, and we were poor in terms of clearing the second ball as we always are.
Force of habit.
So they've got threats.
They have.
They've got threats. They've pulled out some good results, as we said already this season. The Mill one included. So we can't go into the game taking things for granted, and obviously given the lack of momentum and kind of confidence and kind of motivation, generally speaking, that we don't seem to have at the moment, you do wonder as to how we're going to react. And those first 10, 15, 20 minutes are going to potentially be critical.
How's it going, fellow Blues fans? Hope you're enjoying the channel so far and liking today's video. I wanted to take a minute of your time to talk about our sponsor, Bangla Lounge Indian Cuisine. For these three Blue boys, Bangla Lounge has been the go-to choice to enjoy the very finest in Indian cuisine for over a decade now. Made with the freshest ingredients using authentic recipes, Bangla Lounge produces some of the best Indian cuisine that I've ever tasted. And if you enjoy takeaway at the end of the week, orders for collection and delivery with 15% discount, ordering direct through the website. If you enjoy a sit-down meal, you can enjoy this for a 2-for-1 offer, running up for Sunday to Thursday every week on main courses. Or if you're celebrating special occasions such as a birthday, Bangla Lounge offers a buffet restaurant every Sunday, running from 5:30pm to 10pm. So if you like a tasty curry or a sizzling tandoori, get yourself down to Bangla Lounge Halesowen. Links in the description below of our video. And if you would like to fine dine after a win in the B9. Thanks very much. Now back to the podcast.
So to go back to the team, our team, what do you think? What would you like to see?
I'd like to see, personally, I mean, I'm neither here or there about Biddle and Allsop at this point, really. I don't think it has too much bearing on it, considering we haven't got a lot to play for this season. I'd like to see more of Allsop, but Biddle, I'm almost okay with him at this point, at least to some degree anyway, because ultimately we're not really playing for very much. No. But I would like to see more of Allsop, but I do again think he's going to go with Biddle. I personally would like to see Laird at right back. Mm-hmm. But again, I think he'll go with his favourite in Iwata. I think he'll start Iwata again. Obviously, I don't think Wagner's going to be due back anytime soon.
He may be fit, but I can't see him throwing him straight in. I've got to be honest.
No, I wouldn't think so either. No, nor me. I think centre back. I think he'll go with Clara, and I do actually think he'll start Neumann,
which I would be in support of.
Yeah, I'd be in support of that as well. I think then at left back we're going to have to go with, because I put Laird over to the right. But then in saying that, like I say, he's probably going to go resort to his favourite Rutter at right back, which means he'll probably push Laird onto left back. Which again, I'm happy to see. I like Ethan. I think he's good at what he does.
Makes a good impression there.
I think he does a lot of the time as well, and I think he deserves more game time. He's worked very hard to get back into the team and get fit. So
for definite.
I think two in the middle. I think it's going to be Paik and Doyle. I don't think he's going to go with John Solis, even though I think it would be better for us because he would offer more manner in which to break up the play. He's better in the air as well, but I think he'll go with, I think just to try and create more out of the midfield, I think he'll start with Doyle, personally. As much as I say, I'd like to see Solis as well. I think the man out on the right, I think he'll start with Patrick Roberts. I think on the left, he'll go with Dimmy. And I think, again, we'll see Marvin in the 10 with Jay up in the 9.
Yeah. I think in terms of what we would expect to play, I think you've hit it spot on there, particularly with the Water at right back and Laird at left. I think to change that up a little bit, what I'd like to see is I'd like Laird at right back. You could even play, Robinson at left back if needs be, if you wanted to do that.
Could do.
But I'd perhaps rather see Boz at right back and Laird at left back. I said it, didn't I think last time we did a post-match after Derby. I'd prefer Iwata and Paik not to be in the team. Now, I know that's anathema to Davis. Of course it is. It's almost kind of heresy to suggest it to him. But I think we need that. I think we need to show that the other players that we've got faith in their abilities, and that they've earned a place in the team. And if they do that they stay in the team. Yeah. And on the back of that, I would then have Solis and Doyle, no Paik. Keep him out and let's see what those two can do. Right, they complement each other to a degree, so let's see if we can develop that.
Yeah, there's very much a defined role between the two there, isn't there? And like I say, as much as I would like to see Solis in the team, I think he will go with Doyle.
Yeah, I think you're right, and he's not going to take Paik out. Then I think the three behind the striker, I'd like to see Jay on the left, because I think Jay's not a winger, but he cuts in and he's such a pest, isn't he? To people out there,
he causes a lot of problems there, cutting on the inside as well.
Yeah, and we've had a lot of crosses, the most crosses in the Championship, and we do fuck all with them, to be honest. We don't seem to score from crosses that often. No. I think I counted it up once when I was in a nerdy moment, and I thought it comes to about 15 if you take the free kicks out of it. It's like, that's just nothing out of 900 crosses. It takes the piss, doesn't it?
It's a terrible conversion rate.
It's just horrible, isn't it? So don't bother with a winger per se. Just get somebody who's going to do what Jay does. Ducks in the 10. Probably I would go with Vicente on the right. I know Pat Roberts creates chances, but Vicente, I think, kind of, if you've almost got a kind of a 3-forward line then, really,
You have.
And I'd have Prisker up front simply because he's going to give the Blackburn centre backs Aaron Cashin, etc. More of a problem, more of a physical problem. Do I expect that team to be trotting out? No, I don't.
No, I'd agree with you there.
That's what I'd do, and obviously the podcast's about opinions. But I agree with you. I think that the team that you said that Davis will play will be the team that we see.
I think it will be, and I think it'll be a case of, and I really hope that's not the case, because like we said before, we always want Blues to win and do well in each and every game they turn up to. But I don't want it to be a case of 0-0 and 1-0 to Blackburn in 70 minutes, and then we'll change it up finally. And it's like, well, it's too little too late now. They're too set. It's not really going to offer much of a threat. And like you say, our conversion rate from crosses has been absolutely horrendous. And I think there's an argument to say there, Dad, of Stansfield being out on the left, because he's a pest. He causes problems for full-backs, centre-backs, because he cuts inside. And we know Dimmy's form has not been good lately.
No, he probably needs more time, Dimmy, perhaps. I think his injury, I mean, he pulled out the Jamaica squad, didn't he, through injury?
He did.
Another, Stano as well, showed us in a couple of games, where you drop the ball in behind, and he's an expert at kind of, latching onto those. So if we've got that kind of play, and Tommy Doyle in the team does that, because he can play great diagonal passes. That's Stano at his best to me. I think that's when he's running onto those kind of things, he causes a lot of trouble. So that's what I'd do. But, what do I know about it, really, at the end of the day? Me and you are just ordinary Joes. Who's not here, actually, ordinary Joe.
Oh, hey. Very good.
I'm here all week.
Very well done.
Indeed. I don't know. And I guess apart from that, what do we think the score is going to be?
I think it will be 1-1.
Yeah, funnily enough, I agree with that.
I think Blackburn will get out in front. I think we'll just about pull it back. Potentially in the first half. It might end up in the second half. I just don't think either teams are going to be good enough to get it over the line.
No. And I think Stano will score.
Okay.
Might possibly be a penalty, actually.
I'd agree with you. I'm going to go with Stansfield. Maybe not a penalty, but I am going to go with Stansfield.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a great result. Doesn't inspire confidence.
It doesn't.
Doesn't give Chris Davis the headroom that he needs.
No.
But I think that's where we are, to be honest.
I think that's exactly where we are. And like you say, there's only really way that he's going to get anybody back on side at this point is to take maximum points in all these remaining games. However unlikely that is. And does it really make that much of a difference? Maybe it gets us a top 10 finish, depending on how other teams play and how their results play out. But I think, to be fair, our minds, much of the minds of our viewers and listeners and other podcasters have talked about as well, I think our minds are pretty much already made up. I think regardless of what happens now, but whether or not that's the same way the likes of Tom Wagner and Knighthead feel remains to be seen. I don't think we're really going to know anything for real until the end of the season.
I agree. I think that's a certain no. I don't think if a change is going to be made, it had been done in the week just gone. So, I think we're going to have to like it and live with it for the time being.
I think we are. Make the best of what we can, but we will be back, of course, with our post-match reaction following the Blackburn game. So, viewers and listeners, make sure you check that out. Dad, thanks very much for joining me.
And thank you, Dan.
You're welcome.
Been good.
Absolutely.
Not that good though, Joe. Sorry, it's always better when you're here, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. Make sure you're back next time, Joe. Got to make you feel wanted in this, haven't we?
Yeah.
Absolutely. But to all our viewers and listeners, thank you for joining us again. Of course, if you are new to the channel, please subscribe, like if you enjoyed today's video, and hit the bell notification button so you never miss an upload from the Free Blue Boys podcast. While you're at it, why not follow us on our social media platforms, links to which are on the screen for now and down in the description below. And make sure you drop your comment in there in relation to what team you think Chris Davis might start against Blackburn Rovers, and of course, your score predictions. But catch us on the post-match reaction following the Blackburn game this Friday at 3 o'clock kickoff at St Andrews at Knighthead Park. But until then, fellow Blue Noses, stay true to the Royal Blue and keep right on.
Keep right on.